Constituents continue to contact me to press the government regarding its actions towards securing a ceasefire and to help the suffering of innocent civilians in Gaza. So to that end, can I ask the Minister, what recent discussions has the Foreign Secretary held to urge Israel not to besiege or blockade Gaza, to comply with international law and protect innocent lives? Minister.
The Foreign Secretary has been hugely active, engaging with many different nations, and of course he was in Israel just some 10 days ago, making the point that we must ensure that the humanitarian impact of this conflict is constrained and limited.
James Murray.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in Gaza, innocent Palestinians are facing an unimaginable nightmare with a humanitarian catastrophe and thousands of civilians, including children, being killed. Further to his remarks to my honourable friend, can the Minister provide more detail about what the UK Government is doing to urge Israel not to besiege or blockade Gaza, to comply with international law and to protect innocent lives?
Pointing out, Madam Deputy Speaker, that all sides must abide by international humanitarian law, that ultimately there cannot be a military solution to political problems in the Middle East. Clearly the terrorist group of Hamas, we hope, will not have a political role representing the Palestinian people, but de-escalation and peace must come first.
I thank the Minister for answering the urgent question. And we now come to statement. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement to the House on legal migration. Migration to this country is far too high and needs to come down. And today we are taking more robust action than any other government before in order to bring this down. Since my first day in the Home Office, just 3 weeks ago, I have been determined to crack down on those who try and jump the queue and exploit our immigration system. I've been working closely with my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, on this subject. The recent figures from the ONS show a provisional estimate of net migration for the year ending June 2023 of 672,000. Whilst this is lower than the ONS estimate for net migration for the year ending December 2022, it is still far too high. When our country voted to leave the European Union, we also voted to take back control of our borders. And thanks to this Conservative government, we now have a points-based immigration system through which we can control who comes to the UK. We prioritise the skills and talent that we need to grow our economy and to support our NHS, and we have a competitive visa system for globally mobile talent. For example, last year we expanded our health worker visa access to address the urgent need for more social care workers. The whole country can also be proud that in the last decade we have welcomed more than 500,000 people through humanitarian routes. People from Ukraine, from Hong Kong, from Afghanistan, including 85,000 from Ukraine and Hong Kong in the last year alone. The British people will always do the right thing by those in need. But they also, and they are absolutely right to, want to reduce overall immigration numbers, not only by stopping the boats and shutting down illegal routes, but by well-managed reduction in legal migration too. People are understandably worried about housing, about GP appointments, about school places, and access to other public services when they can see their communities growing and growing quickly in numbers. From January 2024, the right for international students to bring dependents will be removed unless they are on postgraduate courses designated as a research programme. We always want to attract the global brightest and best. We have also stopped international students from switching out of the student route into work routes before their studies have been completed. These changes will have a tangible impact on net migration. Madam Deputy Speaker, around 153,000 visas were granted to dependents of sponsored students in the year ending September 2023. Today, I can announce that we will go even further than those provisions already in place, with a 5-point plan to further curb immigration abuses, and that will deliver the biggest ever reduction in net migration. In total, this package, plus our reduction in student dependence, will mean around 300,000 fewer people will come in future years than have come to the UK last year. These measures are possible because we are building up our domestic workforce and supporting British workers. Thanks to the excellent work of my right honourable friend, the Work and Pension Secretary, our Back to Work plan will help people stay healthy, get off benefits and move into sustainable employment. It builds on the ambitious £7 billion employment package from the spring budget to help up to 1.1 million people with long-term health conditions, disabilities, or who have been on long-term unemployment to look for work, to get into work and to stay in work. We're also investing heavily in helping adults learn valuable skills and prepare for the economy of the future. And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have world-class universities that help in that endeavour. So of a 5-point plan, the first of our 5 points will be to end the abuse of the health and care visa. We will stop overseas care workers from bringing family dependents, and we will require care firms in England to be regulated by the Care Quality Commission in order for them to sponsor visas. Approximately 120,000 dependents accompanied 100,000 care workers and senior care workers in the year ending September 2023. Only 25% of dependents are estimated to be in work, meaning a significant number are drawing on public services rather than helping to grow the economy. We recognise that foreign workers do great work in our NHS and health sector, but it is also important that migrants make a big enough financial contribution. Therefore, we will increase annual immigration health surcharge this year by 66%, from £624 to £1,035, to raise on average around £1.3 billion for the health services of this country every year. Second, we will stop immigration undercutting the salary of British workers. We will increase the skilled worker earnings threshold by a third to £38,700 from next spring, in line with the median full-term wage for those kinds of jobs. Those coming on health and social care visa routes will be exempt, so we can continue to bring in the healthcare workers on which our care sector and NHS rely. Thirdly, we will scrap cut-price shortage labour from overseas by ending the 20% going rate salary discount for shortage occupations and reforming the shortage occupation list. I have asked the Migration Advisory Committee to review the occupations on this list because of our new higher skilled worker salary thresholds, and we will create a new immigration salary list with a reduced number of occupations in coordination with the MAC. Fourthly, we will ensure people only bring dependents who they can support financially by raising the minimum income for family visas to the same threshold as the minimum salary threshold for skills workers, which is £38,700. The minimum income requirement of £18,600 has not been increased since 2012. Madam Deputy Speaker, this package of measures will take place from next spring. Finally, having already banned overseas master's students from bringing family members to the UK, I have asked the Migration Advisory Committee to review the graduate route to prevent abuse, to protect the integrity and quality of the UK's outstanding higher education sector. It needs to work in the best interests of the UK, supporting the pathway into high-quality jobs for the global talent pool, but reducing opportunities for abuse. Madam Deputy Speaker, this package of measures, taken in addition with the measures on student dependence that we have already announced in May, means that around 300,000 fewer people will be eligible to come to the UK than were coming last year. This is the largest reduction on record. Immigration policy must be fair, consistent, legal and sustainable. That is why we are also taking the fight to illegal migration. Our plan to stop the boats is working. Small boat arrivals are down by a third, even as illegal migration across the rest of Europe is on the rise. Madam Deputy Speaker, today we have taken decisive action to reduce legal migration with our 5-point plan. Enough is enough. We are curbing abuses to the healthcare visa. We are increasing thresholds, cutting the SOL discount, increasing family income requirements and cutting the number of student dependents. And I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of the statement. Today's statement is an admission of years of total failure by this Conservative government, failure on the immigration system and failure on the economy. It is another example of the total chaos at the heart of this government. Net migration has trebled since the last election, since the Conservatives promised to reduce it, and trebled as a result of their policies on the economy and on immigration, including the Prime Minister's policy decisions. In a chaotic panic, the Prime Minister now opposes the policies that he introduced and thinks that their own decisions are a problem. But who does the Home Secretary think has been in charge for the last 13 years? More chaos, more veering all over the place. Net migration should come down. Labour has called for an end to the 20% unfair discount, for increased salary thresholds to prevent. We have called for an end to the 20% unfair discount, also for increased salary thresholds to prevent exploitation and include advice from a strengthened Migration Advisory Committee, and most of all, we've called for a proper plan with clear links between the immigration system and training and the economy, workforce plans, none of which are included in the statement today because they have no grip, no proper plan. This is a chaotic approach. Immigration is important for Britain, and rightly we have helped Ukraine and Hong Kong. We benefit from international talent and students. But that is why the immigration system needs to be controlled and managed so that it is fair and effective, and also why net migration should come down from these record levels. But there needs to be a proper plan. It was this Conservative government who brought in the 20% wage discount that allowed employers to recruit at less than the going rate, even though the Migration Advisory Committee warned against it, even though it is completely unfair. They chose to apply salary thresholds, again lower than the Migration Advisory Committee originally proposed, and not to update them for years. And as Chancellor, and then, as Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Member for Richmond repeatedly blocked proposals to tighten the rules, including in May this year, and including when they refused Labour's calls to end the unfair 20% discount. And they repeatedly failed to listen to warnings about the failure to train or pay properly here in the UK. 12 months ago, I warned that work visas had substantially increased as a result of major skills shortages in the UK, and the Conservatives were not taking any serious action to address those skills shortages. The Leader of the Opposition 12 months ago warned the immigration system should be linked to new requirements to train up workers here at home. But the Conservatives did nothing, and unbelievably they are still doing nothing. Nothing in this statement about training requirements or workforce plans. They say they want fewer shortage occupations, but it was only 4 months ago that they added bricklayers, roof tilers, plasterers to the shortage list because they have totally failed on construction training here at home. There's no plans to tackle that. Engineering apprenticeships have halved since 2018. Well, no wonder engineering visas have gone up. Again, nothing to tackle those failures. And social care visas have gone up from 3,500 a year to over 100,000 a year because they have failed for years to heed warnings about recruitment and retention in social care, and they halved the budget for social care, workforce recruitment and support back in the spring, and they are still not listening, still refusing to adopt Labour's plan for a proper workforce strategy for social care, including professional standards and a fair pay agreement. They're failing to tackle the delays in the asylum system that have also pushed the net migration figures up, failing to tackle NHS waiting lists that are preventing the long-term sick going back to work. And the Prime Minister is just crashing around all over the place, reversing policies that he introduced, criticising policies he defended 6 months ago, and introducing new immigration policies without any of the economic policies to match. The previous Prime Minister was accused of being a shopping trolley, veering around from one side to the other. The current Prime Minister is clearly veering, but he certainly isn't steering. He's just climbed into someone else's shopping trolley, and he's being pushed around all over the place. So can the Home Secretary tell us where is the workforce plan on social care, on engineering, on bricklaying, on all the shortage occupations that their total economic failure has left us with? Has the Migration Advisory Committee advised on these policies, and where's the reforms to strengthen the committee so that they can do so? And why are they still not introducing our requirements on employers or on the government to address the skills and labour shortages that are driving the increase in the net migration in the first place? The Conservatives are in chaos. They've got no serious plan for the economy, no serious plan for the immigration system, no serious plan for the country. Britain deserves better than this.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I was waiting for the policy announcements from the Labour Party, and sadly I'm still waiting. She talks about skills training. Madam Deputy Speaker, she talks about skills training. Hers was the party which in government dissuaded people from from investing in their own skills, telling people that the only good job was a graduate job, undermining apprenticeships, something that we have set about repairing through our entire time in government. Hers was the party that in government failed to put transitional measures in place when the EU expanded, importing significant numbers of people in the construction industry, which meant there was a disincentive for investing in people and technology and productivity, a situation which she now decries. She fails to make reference to the £7 billion employment package that was announced in the spring budget that will help 1.1 million people get back into work and stay in work. Madam Deputy Speaker, when I was at the dispatch box in the days after my appointment, I said that Labour had a plan for migration. The problem that they have got, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the plan that they are proposing is the plan that I am already implementing. Working with my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, since the day I was appointed, we have put forward the most substantial package of legal migration reforms the country has ever seen. And their great idea is already being put in place by this great government.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am very pleased to welcome about 4.5 of the 5 announcements that my right honourable friend has made, particularly the crackdown on the abuse of the dependence route, which has proved a weakness in the system over recent years, and the increase in the family visa rate. And I can assure him that when he is told that this will cause apocalyptic damage, when I first introduced it 10 years ago at 18,700, which he now says is too low, that was going to be apocalyptic for family life in this country. It wasn't then, it was the right protection then, and I'm glad he's increasing it now. However, can I ask him particularly about the health and care visa, and in particular the reduction of the inability of people now to bring dependents with them? How many care workers does he think will be deterred by that? How much fewer will be the numbers coming here? Because there is a huge shortage in the care sector at the moment of about 150,000, and I would hope that this isn't a significant contributor to the reduction in numbers, because if it is, it will cause damage to the care sector.
My right honourable friend asks an important question. I've looked in great detail. My right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, and I have crunched these numbers in great detail. What we have actually seen through this particular scheme is the displacement of British workers. So the actual total numbers of people in this sector has not increased anywhere near as much as the number of people who have entered on this visa route. We also suspect, globally, there is a significant surplus demand, and whilst perhaps an individual with a family might be dissuaded because of the restrictions we have on family members, it is almost certainly the case that someone else that does not have those family commitments will be willing to put themselves forward. So we do not envisage there being a significant reduction in demand because of these changes that we've made, but what it will mean is that we have the care workers that we need, and not the estimated 120,000 other people that have in most recent years come with them.
SNP spokesperson Chris Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think this statement will be judged on whether, excuse me, it's pandering to the right wing of his own party, or whether it actually addresses the needs of the economy. And I see them all cheering there. So can the Home Secretary answer a number of questions? Can he tell me of the dependent figures that he mentioned, the 120,000? How many of those dependents are children? Or is he suggesting that children should be going into work? What discussions did he have with the Health Secretary? Because he mentioned his discussions with the Department of Work and Pensions. What discussions has he had with the Health Secretary? Because the Home Office figures show that 143,990 health and care worker visas were granted in the year ending September this year. That's more than double than September next year, which demonstrates perhaps the real crisis and creating more barriers and red tape will have on the NHS and care sector. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, Professor Brian Bell, Chair of the Migration Advisory Committee, recently warned that limits in overseas care worker numbers could see a situation where lots of people won't get care. Does the Home Secretary recognise those remarks and recognise that his proposals may cause irrevocable harm to the care sector?
The point about dependence is an incredibly important one. And actually, if you listen carefully to the answer I gave to my right honourable friend, I made the point that we do not envisage a reduction in the number of people working in the care sector, but a reduction in the number of people that are coming with those workers, people, the vast majority of whom are not in work. And whether they are children or out-of-work adults, the simple truth of the matter is that that creates a burden on the British welfare system or the education system, on housing, on school places, on GPs, surgeries. So the offer that we are making is clear. We are supporting the health sector and the social care sector, but we are doing so in a way that minimises the additional pressure on communities. And the point that I would make is it is incredibly easy for us to say and do things that might superficially be viewed as generous, but the people who disproportionately carry the burden of the decisions that we make are those who are on the lower salaries, who are struggling to find housing, who are on waiting lists. And we should be conscious of their needs, and that is why we are being thoughtful and careful about the people that we are welcoming into our country.
Before we go any further, colleagues will recognise there are a large number of people wanting to catch my eye for this statement. We have another statement after that, and then we have an important piece of legislation to which there have been a large number of people who want to speak. So I would urge colleagues to be brief in their questions so that the Home Secretary can be concise in answers. I will only be calling people who arrived for the beginning of the Home Secretary's statement, and I'm trusting those who are late not to be standing. So Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Madam Deputy Speaker, does my right honourable friend think it would be a good idea to have a cap on the number coming in?
Whilst I understand the calls for a cap, in practical terms, managing a cap is difficult. We would want to make sure that we are being as generous as possible to the people who contribute to our society and to our economy, and recognise that not every single individual, whether that, the difference between a child that would count as one person against a cap, or to an investor that may bring a huge number of jobs, they are not the same, and we want to be able to make the difference between the two.
Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Dame Diana Johnson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as the Home Secretary will appreciate, the Home Affairs Select Committee is very keen indeed to scrutinise the policies of the Home Office. At our meeting last week, it proved very difficult because we couldn't get information about, for example, the cost of the Rwanda policy, asylum backlogs, and the number of children who are still missing from hotels as unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So can we please have an assurance from the Home Secretary that when the Immigration Minister appears before the committee next week, that we will have the full evidence base and the economic impact for the policy announcements that have been made today?
I have no doubt that the Immigration Minister, hugely experienced in this portfolio, will come fully armed with the facts and figures at his fingertips.
Sir John Redwood.
Ease the driver shortage was to train more people at home and pay them more. Isn't that the right model for these scarcity occupations?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my right honourable friend is absolutely right. What we want is a high-skilled, high productivity, high wage economy. These proposals and the work that my right honourable friend the Chancellor announced support that. They would do the opposite.
Tim Farron.
Madam Deputy Speaker, these proposals, or some of them at least, will be met with absolute horror in the Lake District hospitality and tourism industry. 20 million people visit our communities every year, £3.5 billion industry, and because of the failure of this government to provide sufficient affordable homes for local people and to have stupid visa rules, we now have a massive workforce crisis. Two-thirds of our businesses are unable to meet the demand that they have because of inadequate numbers of workers. Has he spoken to anybody working and managing in the Lakes hospitality industry, or does he not care what they think?
Madam Speaker, my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, met with the Lake District Tourist Board. So in specific answer to his question, yes, he has spoken to them. And the point is, the simple truth of the matter is we have analysed the figures. We know which sectors have brought in the most people. The hospitality sector is an incredibly important sector in the UK, a fantastic employer of local people. That's what we want to see in that sector.
Tim Lawton.
The migration figures are unsustainably high, notwithstanding the large element of Ukrainian and Hong Kong people coming here. So I welcome most of these proposals, particularly the action on dependents, which have gone up by 7-fold since 2020, particularly pertaining to care and health workers. And we've heard about care workers recruited to homes that don't exist, and dependents who have no connection with those awarded visas being put together by people traffickers. So how are measures going to be taken to make sure that these are enforced and these abuses do not continue to happen?
We've already started to take action on this, and the proposals that we put forward today, the plans that we put forward today, will take that further. Ensuring that the CQC, ensuring that care homes are registered with the CQC goes a long way to addressing the abuses that he has discussed. We are putting plans forward which support our economy, support our health sector, support the British people, and do so in a way which is clear, transparent, predictable and fair.
Neil Coyle.
Madam Speaker, can the Home Secretary tell us which business groups or trade associations were involved in the development of these proposals and support them? Because their concern, the business concern that I've heard today, is that our national economic interest is once again in the hands of Tory headbangers.
Hear, hear. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have and we continue to work extensively with business to make sure that their needs for employees are supported, to support our economy, but also to do that in a way that does not undermine communities, that does not depress wages, and that works in support of the high-skill, high-wage economy that we aspire to, and he clearly does not.
George Eustace.
Deputy Speaker, isn't the problem with a skills-based immigration policy that it gives preferential access to bankers, to lawyers, to accountants, to economists, even though we have no need for such people in this country? We have plenty here, homegrown talent, but it actually makes it very difficult to recruit the people we do need. Care workers, people to work in the food industry, in manufacturing, producing things generally, or indeed in the tourism industry. So will the Secretary of State consider moving away from this failed skills-based migration policy and instead move to one based on the needs of our economy?
My right honourable friend, I have a huge amount of respect for my right honourable friend, but the truth is the figures just do not bear out his assessment. The vast majority of the people that we've seen in the last couple of years' worth of immigration figures are in the lower end of the skills spectrum. It just does not bear out the point that he's made.
Yeah. Joanna Cherry.
Deputy Speaker, there is of course no evidence that immigration pushes down wages. But I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know if the Secretary of State has any elderly relatives in care. I do. And I know the invaluable contribution that overseas care workers make. Many of them are young men and women, for example, from the Philippines, and they are wonderfully hard-working, caring and very respectful of elderly people. Why should they be forced to leave their dependent children thousands of miles away in the Philippines? Can he answer that question?
I'm Deputy Speaker, no one's being forced to do anything. If people choose to come here, then they choose to abide by the rules that we put in place. And that is, I think, completely fair and appropriate. We value. My mother came to work in the NHS in the 1960s. We value the people from around the world who have come to support us. But it is right and fair that we put rules in place, that we let people know what those rules are, and that if they wish to come and join us in this wonderful country and work in our wonderful society, that they abide by those rules.
Sir Simon Clarke.
People in Liverpool South and East Cleveland will warmly welcome today's announcement because the immigration figures that we've seen over recent years are clearly unsustainable. Does it not speak volumes, in fact, that of course we're described as headbangers for pointing out what is blindingly obvious to those of us on these benches? What consideration has my right honourable friend given to an annual migration budget so that we can all be held accountable in this House for the choices that we make on behalf of our constituents?
My right honourable friend makes an important point, that ultimately the decisions we make here do affect the lives of others, and we should always be conscious of the impact that our decisions have. And that is why we have listened very, very carefully to those people who have said that there are housing shortages in their local areas, that the school places are becoming harder to find in their local areas. And when they see figures significantly higher than they were promised, they would want us to take action. We are now taking action. That was always part of taking back control. And what we hear over and over again from the benches opposite, that they do not want us to take action. They are fundamentally wrong on this issue.
Alex Cunningham.
Madam Deputy Speaker, when it was raised by my right honourable friend, the Shadow Home Secretary, last week, it appeared the Home Secretary didn't even realise that workers were being paid 20% less than foreign workers, less than UK workers, the so-called salary discount. But he's followed her good advice, and I welcome the end of this discrepancy. How will the new pay rule be applied to those already here?
The situation will be brought in next year, early part of next year, in close coordination with the Migration Advisory Committee. No one will be disadvantaged that is already here, but ultimately what we want to see is high-skilled, high-wage, high productivity economy. And whilst the Shadow Home Secretary says that the Labour Party want to address these issues, I made a quiet prediction to myself and others that each and every intervention from the opposite benches will be in complete contradiction to her position on the front bench.
Kelly Tolhurst.
Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Home Secretary today for his announcement at the dispatch box and the measures that he will be taking to bring down that number that is too big and unsustainable, particularly for communities within the South East. So I would like to ask my right honourable friend, now he's making the best of being able to change the policy to suit the needs of this country, will he look at going to an annual review where he will be altering those requirements and rules to suit the needs at the time that's suitable for this country?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend makes exactly the right point. Our promise to the British people was to take back control of our immigration system, take back control of our borders, a policy that was at the time and subsequently opposed by the party opposite. And taking back control means making adjustments, addressing the needs of our economy and our society. These adjustments, these changes that I'm putting forward today are in response to our economic needs as well as our social needs.
Rachel Maskell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, there's a global skills shortage around health and care workers. So they have got choices to go to other countries which will accept dependents. So what message does he have for the 7.8 million people currently on the NHS waiting list when they won't have the skills to provide the care they desperately need?
As predicted, Madam Deputy Speaker, each and every one of the speakers opposite thus far has opposed the proposals that I put forward, despite what the Shadow Home Secretary said. As she will have heard me answer now on two occasions, we do not envisage a reduction in demand because of the significantly large number of applicants that was originally envisaged when this visa scheme was put in place.
Chris Grayling.
I do find it baffling that given we've had well over 1 million people come to this country in the last 2 years, the parties opposite don't seem to think it's a good idea to scale back. I congratulate my right honourable friend on this package. Will he also look at the question of those who come to study here? Because there is an automatic assumption at the moment that those who do so have a right to stay after they've studied and look for a job. And I do think there is a case for revisiting that and asking, is that right in all circumstances?
My right honourable friend is right to draw our attention to students. Our university sector is a global success story and widely respected around the world. We want to make sure it maintains that reputation for quality. We want to make sure that the global brightest and best who choose to come and study here and who come and work here are genuinely the global brightest and the best. Higher education should be a route to study and education rather than a visa route by the back door.
Alistair Carmichael.
Madam Deputy Speaker, since the crew for fishing vessels was added to the shortage occupation list by the government, only a handful of visas have been granted, not because of the earnings threshold, because most would meet that requirement comfortably, but because of the requirement for the English language test at level B1. Why does the Home Secretary think that B1 is an appropriate level for somebody working on a fishing boat?
Madam Deputy Speaker, an inability to speak English would hamper anybody, and it really is something which I think is entirely reasonable to expect of people who are coming here to work.
Absolutely. Steve Brown.
This year, vacancies in adult social care fell a little. The figure now stands at a mere 152,000, and that was due to a large increase in the number of care workers coming to this country as part of the shortage occupations list. The library tell me, as of September, there are 121,000 vacancies in the NHS. So can I ask the Home Secretary, what change exactly does he envisage making to the shortage occupation list? Can he please show the workings out on the changes to family arrangements, which he said he's crunched the numbers with the Immigration Minister? And above all, could I ask, who did ministers consult in the health and care sector ahead of today's legal migration announcement?
We asked the MAC to look into these things. That's why it exists, and the point he makes is, however, a very, very important one, which speaks to why we are tightening the system to prevent abuse. Because anyone looking at the numbers will see a very significant number of people over the last couple of years have come on the health and social care visa system, and yet we have lost them to health and social care. That is not what any of us need or want. The right thing to do is for people to come who are genuinely going to be employed in that sector, which is where we need them, which is the promise that they have made to us and that we have made to them. And ensuring that that is the case is the right and fair thing to do.
Beth Winter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister said, and I quote, "Migration in this country is far too high and needs to come down." But as others have already said in the Chamber today, so many of the people who come into this country provide a critical contribution to our employment sectors, no more so than the gaping holes in our social care and health sector. So I'm interested to hear the Minister's response to Unison, the social care trade union, who say that the care system would implode without migrant care staff. And does he not agree that a better, more humane approach would be to fund local government to improve social care pay and conditions?
Madam Deputy Speaker, there you go again. As I said, once again, the Shadow Home Secretary saying that immigration numbers are too high, yet each and every one of the backbenchers on her party disagreeing with any action to deal with it. We have got to bring these numbers down. We have committed to do so, and we've put forward a thoughtful plan which takes into consideration the needs of the health and social care sectors.
Rachel McLean.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think the howls of outrage from the opposite benches really do highlight the inconsistency in Labour Party's position, given that they were the party who wanted to overturn the referendum and introduce unlimited free movement of labour. But does the Home Secretary agree with me that pressure from migration puts pressure on local families and young people who want to buy or rent their own house? And so therefore, will he consider that every time he grants more visas for people to come to this country?
Madam Deputy Speaker, this is an incredibly important point. This is why control of immigration is so important. We are a generous country. We have demonstrated that generosity time and time again, whether it be the Ugandan Asians, whether it be people from West Africa, people from Hong Kong, people from Ukraine. We are rightly proud But it is also important that we prove that we are thoughtful about the implications of those people who live here, whether they've lived here just for decades, for years, or for generations. And that is why it is right that we put forward these proposals, carefully calibrated, to support our economy, to support our health and social care needs, but also to bring down those figures.
Tamanjit Singh Desi.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Speaker, net migration figures are now 672,000, 3 times the level at the 2019 general election, when the Conservatives promised to reduce them. So does the Home Secretary concede that the Tories have failed miserably on immigration policy, along with a whole host of other policies, and that is why their time is now well and truly up?
No, I don't.
Sir Edward Lee.
In raising the threshold to 38,000, may I congratulate the government on taking a thoroughly common-sense view of this. I say that as a senior citizen member of the New Conservatives, so I congratulate the government. But what does this phrase here mean? Those coming on the health and social care visa route will be exempted so we can continue to bring the healthcare workers that our care sector and the NHS need. What does that mean? Will this not drive a coach and horses through this? Surely the solution here is for the care sector to pay proper wages.
Well, we have recognised the recruitment challenge of domestic workers in the health and social care system. We have made clear on a number of occasions that we are not going to allow these incredibly important public services on which we rely to go without the staff that they need. What we are looking to do is bring in the people who are actually employed in these sectors, but not the dependents that they have typically brought with them. That will bring down those headline numbers, as we have committed to do, whilst protecting the health and social care sectors, which we have also committed to do.
Sir Ben Bradshaw.
But he's admitted several times that we're losing people from the health and social care sector, both domestic workers and people that the government has brought in. But he said nothing about increasing pay, has he?
We have said over and over again that we are working towards a higher productivity, higher skilled, higher wage employment sector across all sectors of employment. What we have said is the current regime, the current visa regime, has displaced workers, which is why we're changing it.
Jonathan Gullis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The people of Stoke-on-Trent, North Kidsgrove and Talk will welcome the announcement today from the Home Secretary and, of course, his right honourable friend, the Minister for Immigration, whilst also realising the faux outrage of the party opposite, who can talk tough with the rhetoric on the front bench, but the squirming on the back benches of uncomfortableness when it comes to talking about immigration is something that I enjoy thoroughly, especially when we know they wish to return free movement through the back door. But will my right honourable friend confirm that in future reviews we will actually look to introduce stopping the dependency route for those on one-year research master's degrees as well?
Well, we have committed to do a wider review of the higher education route, the postgraduate route. I take on board the point that he's made. We have already taken action on this. I commit to review this. Once we've seen the outcome of the review, I will be able to update him and the House on the decisions that we make.
Leila Moran.
Deputy Speaker, there was a choice that could have been made here. It was either protect the flank against the Reform Party or back British business. I don't understand how he thinks that the way to create jobs for local people is to starve sectors like the science industry from, for example, the lab technicians that they need to drive what they need to do. How on earth does he think this is going to help anyone in Oxford, Western Abingdon get a job when those industries that employ them won't be able to grow?
Deputy Speaker, it would have been better had she listened to the points that we made about protecting the scientific community in and around Oxford, in ensuring that we still remain attractive to the global brightest and best, to ensure that we protect the people we protect the people who need our protection in the health and social care sector by ensuring that those are staffed. But the simple fact is that we have committed to bring these numbers down. These proposals bring those numbers down and do so in a way that reinforces our commitment to have a higher skilled, more productive, higher wage economy.
Sir Julian Lewis.
In order for any large-scale immigration policy to succeed, does the Home Secretary accept that it's necessary for people to wish to integrate? And what steps are the government taking to ensure that it is a smooth path to integration for those large numbers of people who do come here?
My right honourable friend makes an incredibly important point. This is why I replied earlier about the need for English language. If someone is denied the ability to communicate in the country that they choose to call home, they will be permanently disadvantaged and find it harder to integrate. We want people to integrate. We want people to be and feel part of our communities. We want the communities that they move into to welcome them and to be confident that the immigration system of this country supports both those new arrivals that choose to make this country their home and the people who already live here.
Justin Madders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. After 13 years in power and 7 years after we voted to leave the EU, I don't know why anyone would believe that this government will reduce net migration in the way that has been claimed today. But if we assume that the Home Secretary's figures are right, net migration will still be higher than it was in 2019 when his party promised to reduce it. That's right, isn't it?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the simple truth is the British people have far more confidence in the party that campaigned to take back control of its immigration system, rather than the party that would maintain free movement and whose contributions from the opposition benches have, unsurprisingly, been in opposition to the decisions that we are taking to bring down the numbers of net migration.
Steve Double.
Mr Speaker, I very much welcome the announcement today, and particularly the measures to stop the abuse of the health and care visa. The Home Secretary will be aware of a number of bogus care companies who are charging people tens of thousands of pounds to come to this country only to find that there is no job. Many of them are ending up in Cornwall. So I think I understood him when he said these measures will be introduced in the spring. Could I urge him to look at bringing that forward so that we can end this effectively people trafficking and ripping people off and the misery that it's causing?
My honourable friend is absolutely right that the people who are brought here on a false premise are victims of abuses of this system. We want to make sure, in fact we are already taking action to address those abuses. This package of reforms goes further still with the necessity to be subscribed to the CQC, and he's absolutely right that abuses hurt everybody, and we will continue to take action to address them.
Patrick Grady.
Deputy Speaker, of course, net migration figures are also affected by the number of people who choose to leave the country. And since Brexit, it's been much more difficult for people from Glasgow North who want to live, study or work in Europe. So for any extended period of time. So what steps is the government taking to negotiate more visa exchange programmes with the European Union and other countries that could allow the sharing of skills and experience across borders at pretty much a neutral, at the very least, a neutral effect on net migration?
Well, without wanting to drift back into my old portfolio, I actually, with close coordination with my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, actually negotiated a number of youth mobility programmes to attract the brightest and the best. And he's talking about people leaving certain geographies. He might want to reflect on the fact that a significant number of people are leaving Scotland to come south of the border because of the pernicious income tax regime that the SNP government in Edinburgh have put in place.
Ianici.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank my right honourable friends, the Home Secretary and the Immigration Minister, for listening to us, and the measures that he has announced today I'm sure will be welcomed by constituents in Grimsby. But would he agree with me, not only do we need these measures to come quickly, perhaps we need some more conditionality. So for instance, if we have people coming here supposedly to take up skilled or skills shortage jobs and they're not doing so, then perhaps we should invite people not to stay.
I thank my honourable friend for the comments she's made about these reforms, and I do pay tribute to my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, who I know has been working for longer than the 3 weeks that I've been in this role. She is right that we want to bring people here in good faith. We expect them to act in good faith. If they apply in a certain visa route, we expect them to abide by the conditionality of that visa route. If they contribute, if they play by the rules, if they do the right thing, they will always be welcomed. But we, of course, do take a dim view of those people who seek to abuse our hospitality.
Clive Efford.
So, immigration figures have trebled since the general election in 2019, but it's worth reminding ourselves that back then the Conservatives were telling us that they were going to reduce them to the tens of thousands. So the scale of the failure is enormous, and it's underlined by the Office of National Statistics that says there are 90,000 involved in those figures that are asylum seekers who have been waiting for their asylum cases to be dealt with for over a year. So over 15% of it is due to the sheer incompetence of his department. So what's he going to do about that? Because I didn't see anything, any reference to that in his statement.
We have increased the pace of decision-making of our asylum processing system tenfold. I would remind him that in the most recent years we have had a very generous offer to the people of Hong Kong and to the people of Ukraine, and I know the British people will recognise of the two parties which one of them will grip immigration, and it certainly won't be his.
Neil O'Brien.
This is an excellent package and a big step in the right direction towards a higher scale, higher wage economy with less pressure on our housing and infrastructure. But will my right honourable friend put into the library of the House of Commons the analysis behind his statement that this package plus the reduction in student dependence previously announced will mean that more than 300,000 people who came last year would not be able to? It would be interesting to understand how much of that is the previously announced reduction in student dependence, how much of it comes from each of the different announcements made today, and how it compares to the forecast for future migration laid out by the OBR in the most recent EFO. Will you put that into the House of Commons? Because a previous government was rightly mocked for saying that only tens of thousands of people would come from Eastern Europe. They were completely wrong. As well as having a better policy, can we also have more transparency?
My honourable friend makes a very important point. I'm more than happy to put our estimates of the impact of these announcements and the previous announcements in the library.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I understand exactly what the Minister is trying to do in relation to migration, and there is a need to do some of those things. But I work closely with the Northern Ireland Fish Producers Organisation back home in Northern Ireland, and fishing is very much an industry where foreign workers are welcomed and where there's a clear shortage. In the past, whenever we left the EU, we were promised, and I mean that's the fishing sector, we were promised that things would get better, quotas would make the stock more available, and therefore the fishing sector would grow. The fishing sector welcomed that. Then, whenever it came to the minimum of 18,600, the average wage in Northern Ireland for a fisherman is £24,000. The English language became the next obstacle, and the sector is trying to enjoy that, and trying to agree to that as well. Can I ask the Minister, would there be some realism in relation to the threshold for skilled workers of £38,700? Because it really doesn't give the sector, the fishing sector, the opportunity that they need to be active and to employ people.
I absolutely take the point on board that the honourable gentleman makes. We'll be working with the MAC about ensuring that as we get rid of the shortage occupation list, that we don't undermine key industries. I want to ensure the fishing industry, whether it be in Northern Ireland, whether it be on the east coast of Scotland, can remain viable, profitable, and that will always be part of our thinking.
Miriam Cates.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I do warmly welcome this statement and these measures, and I thank my honourable friend and my honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, for listening to colleagues across these benches, especially our New Conservatives group. Extraordinary growth in the levels of immigration over recent years has been masking some long-term structural weaknesses in our economy, like low productivity, high debt, falling birth rates and negative balance of trade. By propping up the OBR's superficial GDP growth figures, So does my right honourable friend agree that in order to permanently bring down immigration numbers, the OBR must instead turn its attention to the kind of growth that really matters to our constituents: skills growth, wage growth, housing growth, industry growth, in other words, real growth?
I can assure my honourable friend that we in government remain relentlessly focused on the very issues that she has raised. Increasing skills, increasing productivity, increasing investment in plant and machinery and technology to unlock the full economic potential of this country is absolutely at the heart. We will always make our case to the OBR. We will do what we know to be in the best interests of this country and the people that work in this country.
Richard Drax.
Can I commend my honourable friend for at last tackling an unsustainable issue? But was he, like me, a little concerned that two very high-ranking officials were unable at a parliamentary committee to answer basic questions on migrant issues? Can he assure me that this will not happen and these 5 excellent points will be pushed through by the Home Secretary forthwith?
I can assure my honourable friend that we will deliver these proposals with alacrity and at pace.
Dr Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Sleaford North Highcombe, my constituents believe that migration is too high, and so can I welcome the statement today and thank the Home Secretary and the Immigration Minister for all their hard work in developing these proposals. We've heard already from the other side how some large businesses will bemoan the fact they no longer have access to cheap labour undercutting the British workforce. But do he agree with me that the raising the threshold to 38,000 will actually mean the businesses will need to invest in technology, higher wages and better conditions for the domestic workforce?
One of the things that I think a lot of businesses will understand is that to be really profitable, their best choice is to invest in their own businesses and to invest in their own people. Through the super deduction policies that my right honourable friend the Chancellor has put forward, we are encouraging businesses to invest in technology to unlock productivity. We're encouraging them to also invest in the people that they employ, because we are committed to that high wage, high productivity, high growth economy.
Alexander Stafford.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this announcement today that will cut about 300,000 people off our net migration figures. But does